New today, Facebook is starting to crack down on users involved in coordinated efforts to spread misinformation. This comes amid ongoing criticism of the social media giant and its handling of harmful content on the site. According to a report from Reuters, Facebook will use similar tactics it uses to shut down fake accounts to target real accounts. A spokesperson for the company says these measures will go beyond removing posts or banning individual accounts. Facebook plans to target groups who coordinate actions like mass postings of misinformation or harassing users with different views. Now, some cybersecurity experts fear that the site could use these new rules to target political or social activist groups. Joining us live tonight to shed some more light on what this means for Facebook users is financial journalist and host of the Drill Down podcast, Cory Johnson. Cory, I'm going to start with a very basic question. If I'm on Facebook, how do these new rules impact my feed?
Well, if you're not trying to harass people online, it's probably not affecting you at all. And this isn't just Facebook. Let's think about Instagram and how massive Instagram is in terms of its reach globally. But Facebook is clearly on the defensive here, and not least of which from a series of investigative articles that have been in the Wall Street Journal during this week. They're calling the Facebook files, which have shown some really disturbing behavior by groups of individuals, not fake accounts, but groups of individuals doing some really noxious stuff online, on Facebook, on Instagram, things like trying to shut down political rallies of people that they don't like, voices that they don't want to hear, of human traffickers and drug cartels, trying to do recruitment online, using real accounts on Facebook and on Instagram, but using the power of the social network. And Facebook, at least according to the Wall Street Journal, being aware of some of these things, and until today, not doing much about it publicly. Facebook's clearly playing defense. I think what's really interesting here is how much does Facebook really think that they should be policing this stuff? Or does the company culture fundamentally say, these are tools, go online, do what you want, and that's up to you. We don't want to get involved. It's a philosophical debate within Facebook as well as within our society.
Well, and isn't the question, is it realistic that they can police Facebook? I mean, its massive reach globally is beyond compare when you talk about other social media groups. More than 90% of the monthly users are now outside of the U.S. and Canada. So how do they police it, and how do they decide what is harmful?
They can police whatever they want. They have the resources. To be clear, and full disclosure, my firm is long Facebook shares. So it's a very profitable company. They've got all kinds of resources to do the things that they want to do. The things that they don't do are the things they've chosen not to do. They have all the power in the world to do this. Let's also understand that their algorithms are a benefit from showing the things that get us upset, showing the things we want to keep watching, showing us the things that make us keep clicking, keep watching, whether it's pictures of puppy dogs or pictures of political things that get us upset. The things that keep us on their platform are the things that their algorithms benefit from making us watch more and more. They're not innocent players where this is just a message board and people post things and the things show up at random. Right? They have algorithms that are written so that they surface the things that make you stay on and engage the most.
Right, which makes you wonder, Cory, if they're doing this to protect their bottom line or improve their public image. I don't have a lot of time, so I want to ask you one more thing. Critics, some of whom are in Congress, say that Facebook cracks down on groups whose views they don't necessarily agree with. They argue that the tech giant is censoring free speech. So will this add any fuel to that argument in the court of public opinion?
Look, what we've seen from Facebook's activity is that their activity allowing, for example, we know that Russia got involved on Facebook, organized physical political rallies in support of Republican candidates, and yet the Republicans seem to be the ones complaining about this the most. So I think that it just doesn't stand up when you look at the facts. Whether the facts can be used in arguments to persuade people, who knows? But I think what we see is this doesn't look to be partisan, but it does look to be something that benefits the Facebook algorithms and lead to more clicks, which is what that business is all about.
Well, a global company and making a lot of money in the process, nearly $85 billion in worldwide revenue. Cory Johnson, as always, thanks for your time. Good to see you.
Thank you.